Please rise as you are willing and able. We will begin with hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small. A mental note that next time I'll announce ahead of time that we're going 2 times through. So welcome to our community church, Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Alicia, and it is a joy to be with you here on this beautiful day. So who are we as community church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. A couple of announcements I want to also make is that after today's service, we are going to have our congregational meeting, so please stick around after the service for that meeting. We also have a memorial service next Sunday for Avis Moore, who was one of our members for many years. And again, that information can be found in your announcements. So today we welcome back to our pulpit Dr. Laura Miller, who is currently serving as our board president. Laura was raised in the Christian faith, and she counts among her ancestors ministers, preachers, missionaries, and a Methodist bishop. We'll begin our service with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and pay tribute to the original inhabitants of this land. The city of New Orleans is a continuation of an indigenous trade hub on the Mississippi River, known for thousands of years as Bulbancha. We recognize that as a result of broken treaties and involuntary removals, Native Americans were often forced from their lands. We remember and pay respect to the communities impacted by these actions. Native peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and the resilient voices of Native Americans remain an inseparable part of our local culture. With gratitude and honor, we acknowledge the indigenous nations that have lived and continue to thrive here. Let us now prepare for our worship with our chalice lighting. It's Community Church's custom to light a chalice invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join us in singing, "We Light This Flame." The words are printed in your order of service. Bring up Cynthia for our Words for All Ages.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm going to share with you a little book that I found. It's called Change Sings, and it's by the poetess Amanda Gorman. If you want to know what the youth are thinking, read Amanda's works. She's brilliant. And the drawings are from Lauren Long. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mystery, I sing with all the planet and its hills of history. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk only of distances from where and how we came. I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside of me, because I am the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I am the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the waves starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We're all here, change strumming. Don't you want to sing along? Thank you. The end. And let's sing the children. Oh, are they here? Okay, yeah, she's here. So let's sing her on that. Thank y'all so much.
Reading today is from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It seems to be a fact of life that human beings cannot continue to do wrong without eventually reaching out for some rationalization to clothe their acts in garments of righteousness. And so, with the growth of slavery, men had to convince themselves that a system which was so economically profitable was morally justifiable. The attempt to give moral sanction to a profitable system gave birth to the doctrine of white supremacy. Religion and the Bible were cited and distorted to support the status quo. It's the end of the first reading.
So now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you have a need to share with this community, whether it be expressing something that weighs heavy on your heart these days, or letting us know what reason there is to celebrate, you can either fill out one of the cards that Will has, you can type in the chat box if you're online, or you can come up to speak at the microphone after a musical interlude. So you can remain seated for a musical interlude, which is number 356, Will You Seek in Far Off Places. From Lizzie Colleen. My dad was officially diagnosed with moderate dementia and extensive nerve damage and advised not to drive on Mardi Gras. We've been going through a whirlwind of relocating him here, which has been very hard and grief-filled for him and an adjustment for all. Thank you, Lizzie. Kathy writes, on this anniversary weekend, Bloody Sunday, MSNBC ran a piece on Viola Liuzzo, who was murdered by the KKK, shuttling people between Selma and Montgomery. She was from Detroit. With gratitude for her and those like her who came before and concern for those who have taken up the battle for racial justice, let's light a candle. Thank you, Kathy. We have several minutes. Sally Jackson writes, my joy is that my sister Pam is here for a visit. Welcome, Pam, wherever you are. Hi. And Nick writes, extreme joy having Scott accompanying us on drums. It adds so much to our service. Give him a round of applause. Scott was very nervous, having not done this for several years, but he's doing great. Yeah. It is very nervous. I will share a joy. A few weeks ago, it was wonderful to go out and have dinner with Bennett and Carol Britt. One sorrow is that due to health concerns, they are looking for assisted living in Tyler, Texas. So they may not be in New Orleans much longer. But another joy is Bennett was really, really worried about his library. He's very well read, as you know. He has thousands and thousands and thousands of books. He didn't know what he was going to do with them. I just mentioned it to my partner, who's like, well, I have a room. We'll take the books. So if you ever borrowed a book from Bennett and you enjoyed it, you want to borrow it again, apparently I own them all now. So far that's a joy. We'll see how that goes. Is there anyone else who has a joy or a sorrow that they would like to share up at the microphone? In that case, we will light 2 more candles. One for the joys left unsaid, perhaps still waiting to be shared. And one for the sorrows left unsaid, perhaps that we cannot yet put words to. Know that we love you and that we hold you in our hearts.
Thank you, Alicia and Bill. My second reading is from Simone Weil. The gospel makes no distinction between the love of our neighbor and justice. So now, taking his name in vain. My paternal grandfather was a Presbyterian minister. He was fairly conservative, an Eisenhower Republican. He had violently opposed Franklin Roosevelt, not for his economic policies, but for his role in repealing prohibition. He even wrote FDR a 10-page, single-spaced, typewritten letter about it. My mother did not like him, to the point of almost calling off her marriage to my dad over what she perceived as his father's meddling. My dad, his son, had run away from home at the age of 17 after a highly fraught confrontation with him. They later reconciled to a certain extent. My grandfather did officiate at my parents' wedding, but my dad refused to live in the same region as his father. We always lived at least a long day's drive away. All of which is to say that when we all agreed with grandfather about something of potential controversy, it was a big deal. And what we did agree on was his interpretation as a biblical scholar and ordained Doctor of Divinity minister of the commandment, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain." In my grandfather's well-considered opinion, it was those who posed as Christian people of God, whose actual behavior was not at all Christ-like, who trespassed the commandment. He would cite certain televangelists who solicited money from those least able to afford it and used it for their own luxuries. Those were the ones who took the Lord's name in vain, not those who simply said such things as "God damn." It was those who took Bible quotes and perverted them for their own selfish uses. It was, in fact, people like our 45th president and his followers, though Donald was blessedly unknown during my grandfather's life. This kind of biblical misinterpretation, cherry-picking, and abuse has a long and disgraceful history. The Bible has been quoted in support of slavery, to name just one example. More recently, quotes have been cited in support of homophobia, misogyny, racism, and more. I have spent a lot of time, over many years, trying to come to grips with the beliefs of both my oldest friend and a close family member. To me, their religious creeds and their politics just did not seem to fit together in any logical way. They are both self-proclaimed devout Christians, and yet their political words and deeds don't jive with my understanding of what Jesus asked and even demanded of his followers. My bafflement resulted from the very real quest to comprehend how and why they would be so contradictory. I love these people dearly, and so my failure to understand the reason for their worldview has been a serious and ongoing concern to me. Over time, and after many failed attempts at communicating to reach understanding, I finally had to tell both of them in the past few years that we could no longer discuss religion or politics if we were to maintain an otherwise good and loving relationship. This abstaining from certain topics of conversation is very difficult for me, as both religion and politics are forefront in my own thinking and life. But recently, I read a book that may shed some light. My aim this morning is to share with you what I have learned, in hopes that it may help all of us to have the challenging discussions with those with whom we do not yet, being hopeful here, see eye to eye. Or at the very least, I hope to deepen our own understandings. The book has a provocative title, Christians Against Christianity: How Right-Wing Evangelicals Are Destroying Our Nation and Our Faith. The author is Ornery M. Hendricks, Jr. Hendricks has impressive credentials as both a Christian and a scholar. The book's dust jacket describes him as a best-selling author, an activist, a religious scholar, a former theological seminary president, and an ordained elder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. His books include The Politics of Jesus, Rediscovering the True Revolutionary Nature of Jesus' Teachings and How They Have Been Corrupted, and The Universe Bends Toward Justice, Radical Reflections on the Bible, the Church, and the Body Politic. He currently teaches religion and African American studies at Columbia University. He is also a visiting professor of Bible and ethics at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. So, in my opinion, pretty impressive and worthy of our attention. Now, I think that most of you know that I do not consider myself to be a Christian, though that is the faith in which I was raised and in which I believed in earlier years. These days, my prayer would be more along the lines of, "Dear Jesus, please save me from your followers." However, I have always recognized that most of his teachings do resonate with me. It is others' interpretations of the Bible that I find problematic, kind of like my grandfather. I think many of us Unitarian Universalists feel the same way. In this most recent book, Hendricks examines both the words of Jesus and the contradictions that so many right-wing evangelicals adhere to in their place. Today, I will present what may be considered an oral book report as I share his concepts with you. Quoting again from the Dust Jacket, "Today's right-wing evangelical Christianity stands as the very antithesis of the message of Jesus Christ, with falsehoods, contradictions, misuses of the Bible embedded in their rabid homophobia, poorly veiled racism, demonizing of immigrants and Muslims, and their ungodly alliance with big business against the interests of American workers." He concludes, "What they offer America is anything but good news," an allusion to the good news of the gospel itself. He questions, why do they define themselves not by those they love, but by those for whom they have no love, such as Muslims, gays, immigrants, women who seek to exercise full sovereignty over their bodies, those who seek succor and asylum in our land from deadening poverty and violence. His main theme, and the biblical quote to which he returns repeatedly throughout the book, is, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Matthew chapter 22, verse 39. This could also be understood by us Unitarian Universalists as another way of stating our first principle, to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Early in the book, he gives us some history about the original evangelicals, those of previous centuries who were quite different from the right-wing ones of today. Those earlier believers were, among other justice-seeking people, ardent abolitionists. They also sided with working people and others striving for basic rights and respect. So, what happened? Deceivers entered the scene, given scope and influence by those in power for whom they did bidding, combing through Scripture to find excuses for what they had determined to do for their own enrichment. And too many church leaders followed along, preaching perverted gospel to their flocks, including to those whom I referred to earlier, my own beloveds. With his detailed explanations, Hendricks goes somewhat into the weeds of the original Hebrew and Greek biblical vocabulary as he makes his points. I will spare you the etymology and recommend that if interested, you should read the book for yourself. I will, however, give you the basic concepts. A major theme is social justice. He explains and interprets what is usually translated as righteousness as being better understood to mean social justice. He writes Matthew 5:10 as, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for social justice's sake." And he quotes the ethicist Nicholas Wolterstorff, who said, "My own reading of human affairs is that righteous people are either admired or ignored, not persecuted. People who pursue justice are the ones who get in trouble." Hendricks also writes about the world of Jesus' time as being apparently limited in available resources. And he says, Jesus railed against the rich without compromise or qualification. But because his social justice pronouncements concerning poverty and wealth are so extreme, they are usually ignored or dismissed as quaint and unrealistic. But when viewed in the context of Jesus' setting in life, what might appear quaint or unrealistic, in actuality, offers valuable ethical guidance. And his version of Matthew 5:6, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for social justice." Hendricks repeatedly lays out the transgressions of Donald Trump as he questions how those who claim to follow Jesus can also support right-wing policies. Among other things, he points to the attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, to cut food stamp benefits, and to the tax breaks implemented to reward those who are already extremely wealthy. He cites the racism inherent in Trump's real estate policies, his vilification and mistreatment of Muslims, and questions, how is any of this compatible with the commandment to love thy neighbor? He makes reference to the need for hospitality. Again, citing the conditions and the mores of the ancient times, the willingness to look out for the stranger or the foreigner or immigrant was of paramount importance. The land was stark and challenging. Without hospitable way stations or people willing to offer goods and services, any travelers would be doomed. It was, in fact, this lack of being hospitable that is cited as the real sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, not, as has been misunderstood, anything whatsoever to do with homosexuality. In fact, he quotes John 13:34, "A new commandment I give you, love one another," and points out that the core message of Jesus is love. Nowhere in the gospel does it say anything about whom we should or should not love, only that we should love. He quotes Jimmy Carter, an old-style evangelical Christian, not a right-wing one, who said, "I think Jesus would encourage any love affair if it was honest and sincere and was not damaging to anyone else. And I don't see that gay marriage damages anyone else." End quote. As for so-called traditional marriage, the Bible has numerous examples, including polygamy, requirements for widows to marry brothers-in-law, concubinage, handmaids forcibly impregnated by their mistresses' husbands, etc. On the topic of abortion, which Hendricks points out only became an evangelical issue in the 1980s, sometime after Roe v. Wade was established. It is only once referred to in the Bible, and that is in a remarkable fashion. Numbers 5, verses 11 through 31, lays out a detailed formula by which a husband who suspects his wife of being unfaithful subjects her to a ritual that results in the expelling of her fetus, if she is indeed guilty. Hardly the all fetuses must be saved philosophy that is ranted at us these days. Currently, right-wing evangelicals are pushing abortion as more important than childhood poverty, gun violence, widespread hunger and homelessness, the trafficking and abuse of children, and the millions upon millions of Americans without health care. If they were really pro-life and not just obsessed with the unborn, they would be similarly filled with righteous indignation over the massive social injustices that bedevil our nation and the world. If they were really pro-life, they would be actively anti-war, anti-death penalty, and anti-police terrorism and brutality. They would fight to abolish poverty and misogyny and patriarchy, all of which distort and destroy the quality of human lives and community. And Hendricks poses the question, how can you care so deeply about the unborn and yet show so little compassion and concern for the children of God who are already here? He compares the Israelites of Exodus to modern immigrants, pointing out that we must ask ourselves why anyone would abandon homes, land, livelihoods, possessions, family, and community to travel by foot for hundreds of danger-ridden miles with babes in arms and children in tow, to arrive at a hostile country's border with no guarantee of acceptance, if not to escape real danger and desperate hardship. He writes of an unholy alliance between right-wing evangelicals and big business. He cites their union-busting tactics and history. Robber Baron Jay Gould said, "I can hire one half of the working class to kill the other." John D. Rockefeller went so far as to hire strikebreakers to murder other workers. In our own time, President Reagan's firing of the PATCO workers, the air traffic controllers, early in his presidency, set the tone for destroying much of the progress previously made by and for working people by unions. Hendricks proclaims, shouldn't there be a right-wing evangelical advocacy for a minimum wage that is a living wage? Why aren't the exorbitant multiples of CEO salaries a Christian issue for them? Why isn't there a right-wing evangelical position on corporations exporting jobs to cheaper labor markets, destroying the livelihoods of millions of American workers simply to increase profit margins and raise their stocks' market prices, or raise shareholders' dividends by a few pennies per share? Of course, there should be. But ultimately, right-wing evangelicals support an unjust status quo of vast disparities between America's rich and its poor. This is anathema to the gospel of Jesus Christ and destructive to the fabric of our nation. This is another area of American life in which the right-wing evangelicals have abdicated the moral high ground they so piously claim in order to support morally indefensible policies that are the cause of extraordinary pain to those they should be striving to serve and love as their neighbors. Finally, Hendricks, not unlike my own grandfather, presents his own interpretation of some scripture. Specifically, he examines the concept of the Antichrist. It is not, he proclaims, a number such as 666 or a beast. It is rather, like those who take the name of the Lord in vain, the spirit of those who, quote, falsely portray the nature of Jesus and of his mission in the world, unquote. Let us not forget that that nature and mission are love. Thank you, and blessed be.
Join me in singing hymn 194, hymn 194, Faith is the Forest.
Community Church, Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659. That's 370-2659. You can text the word give. And you can also send us a check at 6690 Fleur de Lis Drive, New Orleans, 70124. Our offertory music is number 18, What Wondrous Love Is This?
Today's benediction is from Beyond Order by Jordan B. Peterson. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain means that it is wrong to claim moral inspiration from God while knowingly committing sinful acts. We'll now extinguish the chalice. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again. And don't forget to stick around after the final bit of music for the very, very brief congregational meeting. Thanks.
Our closing hymn today is in 151, I Wish I Know How.